Time to talk SC right here at the Voice of College Football. We got Matt Zemek on the line from Trojans Wire to help us do it as he does each and every week. We always appreciate the conversation. And Matt, how you doing this week?
Doing well, Mark. And I'm a Cincinnati Bengal fan, so it was another tough loss. But here's the thing, and I lived in Seattle when the Seahawks lost Super Bowl 49 to the Patriots. Both the Seahawks 2014 run to Super Bowl 49 and the Bengals run to Super Bowl 56, they were such ridiculous, improbable runs, and then they ended in heartbreak at the Super Bowl. But it's different when you have that kind of joy as opposed to being a number one seed and you dump truck a couple teams in the playoffs and you're expected to win, and then it falls apart in the big game. That hurts so much more. So the Bengals were playing with house money. So even though I love the Bengals, my uncles in Cincinnati. Uh, you know, it's just really hard to get too torn up about it. Like it was much harder in the 80s when, because both of those Bengal teams were number one seeds who played great in the AFC playoffs, and like so those were heavyweight teams. It's harder that way. And I still remember as a 13-year-old kid being crushed in Super Bowl 23 by Joe Montana. So here you had Matthew Stafford, but it's a different vibe when you're an underdog the way the Bengals were.
So that Seahawks team, that was the team that obviously was trying to go back to back. So that wasn't the unexpected portion. That was the year that they pulled off that improbable final 2 minutes against the Packers and then into overtime.
They were a really good team, but like they had no business winning that NFC Championship game. So like that Super Bowl berth felt like finding a $100 bill on the street, and so they gave back the $100 bill in the Super Bowl. So I think how you get there, that's the point. How you get there affects the emotions for a fan. So it softens the blow for me. Maybe not for native Cincinnatans, because I've never lived there, but for me it did soften the blow.
And much like 33 years ago, the Bengals held a lead like they did against Joe Montana before Montana went 92 yards and Lewis Phillips dropped an interception in the end zone that would have prevented that gets much forgotten just prior to the John Taylor touchdown to win the game.
Yeah, and Lewis Phillips died not too long thereafter. Parallels to another big sporting event from the 1980s, Donnie Moore, who gave up the home run to Dave Henderson. He died a few years later. So, athletes who made memorable mistakes and their lives just went downward. That's true sadness. More than winning or losing a game. That's a really sad story.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we get back to the fun and games, and Lincoln Riley having a good time at the Super Bowl. Speaking of which, something that he can't or could not do when he was the head coach at Oklahoma. And so USC celebrities showing up and doing more than just preparing for a football season to win games. But again, it's got to sell in regards to entertainment in LA.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Like, we know people are excited in Los Angeles about USC football. We know it's an electric vibe, and the program is being restored. But Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams, they're not sitting on their butts just, allowing this to happen and just assuming that excitement is going to continue to build. They are working to continue to develop that excitement, and they realize that like this is important not just for USC but for the Pac-12. You have to get the word out. You have to promote your brand. You have to be aggressive. We talked about this last week when talking about how George Kliavkoff reacted to the Caleb Williams transfer. Larry Scott didn't put in the work. Kliavkoff is, and so we saw Lincoln Riley tweeting out his 50-yard line sweet box at SoFi Stadium for the Super Bowl. We saw Caleb Williams over the Super Bowl weekend in LA attending the USC UCLA basketball game at the Galen Center and sending the student section into a frenzy. So like they're putting in the work to promote the USC brand. And if people think that this is just cosmetic or atmospheric and doesn't contain a lot of value, here's the thing. If there's a really tough, close college football playoff debate in 2022 or maybe 2023, and USC's just on that knife's edge against the Big 12 champion or the other potential number 4 seed. It's this kind of stuff that cements that brand and cements that identity, which says, okay, USC deserves to be here. USC is supposed to be in the playoff. And, obviously Pete Carroll never had the chance to be in a 4-team playoff. He would have loved to have been there because all the years that he barely missed getting in the BCS 1 versus 2 title game, USC would have been a 3 or a 4 seed. And given Pete Carroll's track record with a month to prepare, having that defensive game plan ready to ambush an opponent would have been right up his alley. So, like Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams, they both know that they need to be planting seeds right now in the media, getting themselves out in the media bloodstream. You saw Caleb Williams also going on Good Morning America earlier this month. So it's just they are putting in the work. And the contrast with Clay Helton goes so much beyond the fact that Clay Helton wasn't a good football coach. It was that Clay Helton was lazy as a recruiter, as a promoter, in terms of doing all the daily things that you need to do around the clock. College football now is a 12-month-a-year sport, much like the NFL with the transfer portal. Like the transfer portal has made college football a year-round sport. And so Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams, they get that, not just as competitors, but in terms of working the media, working the public relations angle, getting out that good message, providing goodwill in and around the community. And they're hoping that that's going to carry a benefit for them if there is a 50-50 debate with another competitor in a college football playoff competition coming up soon. So, they're putting in the work, and that's really the big story at USC, also in the Pac-12 offices. Just this new wave of leadership in the conference and at USC understands in ways their predecessors did not how to market and how to grow a program.
Matt Zemek's here talking Trojans football. Catch him on Trojans Wire for the deep dive on USC football in the Pac-12. Ed Orgeron, like Pete Carroll, owns a national championship ring at the collegiate level. Unlike Pete Carroll, not given nearly as much credit for that national championship for a number of reasons that we would go into, but most college football fans are aware of a situation that was stacked in Orgeron's favor because of Ed Orgeron's time at USC, and many had pushed at that time for him to retain that job and bypass the interim label after a 6-2 run during the 2015 season, correct? 2014 season. No, we're going back before that. What year was that, Matt? 2013 season, yeah, because Helton would have been taking over in 2015. Ed Orgeron, of course, again. Yes. And so there is talk based on what Ed Orgeron had to say this week on the Dan Patrick Show that he would be open to coming back to coaching after a year off. That makes that initial that connection to USC a talking point.
Yeah, so it's obviously an interesting talking point, and hey, that's what the Dan Patrick Show is designed to do: provide talking points. I mean, we saw USC's Carson Palmer float some coaching rumors during the coaching search on the Dan Patrick Show. So they're getting the names out there, but it really doesn't have legs, or at least it certainly shouldn't, because we need to remember this: Ed Orgeron wasn't dismissed from LSU just because of the on-field stuff and the lack of wins and the inability to sustain the program after Joe Burrow left. It's also because his private life got pretty messy. There was inappropriate behavior, clouds of controversy and scandal off the field. That was part of the mix. And so USC under the Lincoln Riley regime, first off, you just don't need that kind of headache. You don't need to invite those questions. You want to have staffers that don't bring any of those extra complications. But the other thing is Lincoln Riley having Ed Orgeron on his staff, like that doesn't sound like a fit. That there's just cut from very different cloths in terms of personalities, styles, what they're looking for on the recruiting trail, how they go about their business. Lincoln Riley's assembled a very young coaching staff, no one over 50 on that staff. And I know that Ed Orgeron has, a track record as a superb recruiter, but like he's had his time, and it certainly seems as though no one should be coveting Ed Orgeron's services. I sincerely think that there's a very good chance that his coaching career is completely done. Like it's run its course. Um, maybe there's a lower level, group of 5 program that would be willing to hire him, maybe make a splash. If it's existing in obscurity, maybe you take a chance on Ed Orgeron. But I just can't see him latching on as a high profile recruiter assistant type at a prominent program, USC very much included.
To draw a few parallels to Les Miles, I'm not going to take Ed Orgeron into that category, but Les Miles brought recruiting violations from Oklahoma State that were well publicized and documented in Sports Illustrated, most famously, to LSU. And then, of course, the program won big, but also ran amok under Les Miles off the field. And then he goes to Kansas, and they try to make the big splash. They do make the big splash temporarily. He doesn't improve the football program, and his issues follow him there. Ed Orgeron maybe took over a lot of off-field issues from Les Miles, but he certainly didn't do anything to clean them up by all accounts. We got Matt Zemek on the line from Trojans Wire breaking down USC for us. The NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis kicks off on March 1st. Keontae Ingram, Drake Jackson, Drake London, Chris Steele, Isaac Taylor Stewart are the 5 USC players, which is a low count for the Trojans. What stands out to you? Who's going to make a splash? Who's one to watch there?
Well, a couple things. We'll focus on the big player in a little bit, but first, with Isaac Taylor Stewart and other players in the secondary, whether they are able to work up their way up the draft board to like round 3 instead of round 5, that's not too big a concern, right? Because we saw Talanoa Hufanga go last year in round 5 to the 49ers, worked out pretty well, and he scored the touchdown against the Packers on special teams in the NFC divisional playoff. 49ers loved him, and they got great value for him at round 5. So in terms of the back end of the USC Combine invites, and the players in the secondary, it's not that big a deal whether they get picked in round 3, round 4, round 5. It's just a matter of can they deliver the goods and find the right match, much as the 49ers, were very pleased with what they saw from Talanoa Hufanga in his rookie season. So that's the smaller note. The bigger note is Drake Jackson. Drake Jackson is the big focus for USC at the Combine because we know that Drake London, if he's fully healed from his injuries, he's a top 15, top 20 pick, very possibly top 10. Like he was on track to be a Heisman Trophy finalist. He was on track to being the Biletnikoff Award winner as the best receiver in the country before he suffered the injury against Arizona on October 30th. So like his stock should be fine as long as it's clear that he's healed or is going to fully heal. So Drake Jackson is the big question mark because he had lots of first round projections heading into the 2021 season, but we saw how much the USC defense under coordinator Todd Orlando cratered. It just cratered. The bottom fell out, allowing 40 points in a series of home games against Oregon State and Utah and even Stanford. Stanford lit up USC in the Coliseum, and UCLA put up that big 62 in the rivalry game. So Drake Jackson had a very disappointing season. There's clearly no USC player at the Combine with more to prove than him. So he's trying to get a late first round selection. Like that is the target. He's not going to go top 15 after the season he had. But the question is, can he be that day one back end of the first round, talking, 25 to 32? Can he get himself up there, or is he going to fall to a day 2 selection, which would definitely be disappointing for him and reflect poorly on the lack of player development he got from Clay Helton and then Todd Orlando at USC?
We got Matt Zemek on the line from Trojans Wire. You got to get on over there and check out his work covering USC football in particular. And Matt, I'm going to hit you with something that I presented to our live stream. This was on Monday night. So I ranked all the programs in college football. So this was not an all-time ranking. It's also not a team ranking. It's a program ranking. Where does the program stand in my estimation? Well, I had USC, which I would say USC Auburn, because of all the issues there in the last few weeks, two of the more difficult programs to rank because there being such a dichotomy of recent past and issues, but hope. Of course, you hire one of the best coaches in the country. He makes an immediate splash. You pull in one of the best quarterbacks and some playmakers, and so the future's bright. Obviously, the team was awful last year, the defense in particular, and it's been a underachieving program for the last few years. So putting all those factors together, I ranked USC as the 23rd best football program in the country. Again, this is not a projection, but this is kind of where things stand right now.
I would go a little bit higher. I'd say probably top 15, but certainly not top 5 because USC has to earn that place in the college football playoff. It has to earn that place in the very top tier. But I would say top 15. Like I think that with Lincoln Riley there, I mean USC should win 10 games this upcoming season. If you're winning 10 games at USC, that's pretty much a top 15 placement. Now, of course, the damage that Clay Helton did to the program over the past several years, that certainly eroded and downgraded USC's stature. So I don't think the Trojans are quite in the top 10. I think that's kind of like the Mendoza line there, but certainly not in the top 5. But also, I think certainly well inside the top 20, probably around 12 to 15, I think would be just right for USC, realizing the ceiling that it now has under Lincoln Riley, but also realizing that we shouldn't just automatically grant a certain degree of status, that there's a certain degree that USC has to go out and earn. So I think that's kind of the right balance, 12 to 15.
Okay. I pretty much have the same approach on it, but I'm going to weight them down at 23. The results are more like top 65 or 70 in the country coming into 2022. But again, Lincoln Riley, transfer portal, and everything that's going on there at USC looks like a bright future. Matt Zemek, Trojans Wire, got to join him there. Please do so. And Matt, we appreciate you stopping by as always.
Thanks so much, Mark. Have a great week.
You too.